Hey everyone, welcome back to the Soundbyte. My name is Andrew, and today we're going to be jumping back into a bit of a Black Sabbath again, second time around for this channel. We're going to the second album this time, Paranoid, which is a fantastic album by Black Sabbath, their second album. And one of the kind of interesting keynotes about the album is not only is it a huge influence on many bands since its release back in 1970, but it was only released not long after the first album, which is absolutely amazing. If you sort of read the backstory behind it, it's kind of amazing how the album kind of came together. Very sort of organic, and a lot of the songs were written quite quickly. I guess it was sort of released so quickly after the first one because of they wanted to capitalize on the success of the first album, I guess. So it's weird because back in those days, bands used to release albums, a lot more quickly, a lot more consistently, I guess, compared to these days where it's, you can be 5 years or whatever before in between albums. But, back then, bands would release albums, every year almost, so it was amazing to see that Black Sabbath kind of were quite active during those first few years, I guess. So, which rightly so, I guess you want to sort of, capitalize on any success that you get. I do wonder why that's not really much of a thing these days. If you have any thoughts on that, let me know in the comments as to why do you think bands don't release albums as frequently as they did back in the day, So, because I wish there were bands that would sort of put out more material, So, but anyway, Black Sabbath's a Paranoid album, fantastic stuff, and the album is just chock full of like just great songs as well. It's a pretty flawless album from start to finish. I think it's better than the first one, maybe a little different to some degree. I guess it's just the beginning of the evolution of the band, I suppose. Yeah, many songs on there that ended up being hit songs, and still to this day, I guess, it's a lot of memorable stuff that people just recognize instantly. The title track, which we're going to jump into today, Paranoid, is one of those songs. So let's get right into it. Those riffs, I mean, seriously. Just pause it quickly right there because it's not a long song. It's just under 3 minutes. So, just one of the things that sometimes happens when you do revisit a classic song, is you start to notice things that maybe you didn't notice the first few times, or maybe even ever at all. And one of those times is the bass line, which I kind of feel sometimes, Geezer Butler's bass lines, while they have been obviously acknowledged and recognized, his playing is quite unique and just sort of stands out. Sometimes it does get forgotten and kind of gets shuffled under the rug a little bit. And his bass line all throughout this song is one of those sort of understated sort of things as well. It sort of gets lost in sort of obviously, Iommi's riffs, and it's one of those things that I kind of feel like Geezer Butler's bass lines definitely is one of the driving forces of Black Sabbath. And while it was very kind of highlighted on the first album, I kind of felt on the second album he kind of sort of comes into his own a little bit more, and then it kind of just goes on from there. But it's weird how it's almost subtle though. If you listen carefully on the bass lines on this particular track, it's kind of just there, and but it's like I feel like if you were to remove it, it would change the way that it sounds completely. Because one of the things that I did mention in the previous Black Sabbath video is the fact that even back in 1970, their recordings were so crystal clear. And of course, people will argue, because of the way that they're recorded, as far as like, that warmer sort of analog sound is a big part of it. I'm sure it is, but I think it's a lot of it has to do with just the way that they play their instruments. I think, because I'm sure if another band had recorded the exact same stuff, maybe it wouldn't have sounded quite that way, So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I think all of them, but especially Geezer Butler as well, sort of that clear, crystal clear bass line, is just one of those understated things, I think.
I need someone to show me the things in life that I can't find. I can see the things that make true happiness. I must be
Kind of feels like there's two solos there. Let's quickly pause it there again. It's another thing that I've kind of might have missed because the I guess the main solo they kind of stands out more. And I'm kind of listening to it a bit more carefully this time, but it feels like there's another sort of second solo, almost like a harmony kind of thing going on there, which I didn't even notice before, which is interesting. So that's cool.
make a joke and I will sigh and you will laugh and I will cry. Happiness I cannot feel and love to me is so unreal. And so as you hear these words telling you now of my state, I tell you to enjoy life. I wish I could, but too late.
There you go, Black Sabbath with Paranoid. Absolutely classic track. It's definitely one of my favorite tracks from Black Sabbath. It's not one, weirdly enough, that I don't listen to that often. It's been a while since I've heard it, but it is one of those songs that I kind of feel it kind of summarizes, well, not summarizes, but it definitely is one of the defining songs of Black Sabbath, I felt. It's one of those songs that always seems to like you hear it and you go immediately, you know who it is. It's one of those things that is always stuck in my head and has always stood out. Just the main riff really is one of the things that I kind of love about that song. But yeah, like I said, interesting how I kind of just picked up on that sort of second solo that was going on there. Which it's good to kind of come back to some stuff and re-listen to it again with a different set of ears, and that's when you start to pick up on things. Because when you first listen to music, you don't really notice some of the subtle nuances or some of the sort of different elements that are sort of going on in the background a little bit, and it obviously takes a lot more sort of time to listen to and even sort of taking time away from the song and then coming back to it years later and sort of going, all right, you're listening to it again with a different mindset and stuff, So, but the one thing that always remains the same is the fact that I absolutely love that song. It's just one of those great songs. And a lot of bands, obviously, over the years, have covered that song and sort of put their own spin on it. I remember when Megadeth did a cover of it years ago, and I absolutely thought it was brilliant. Sort of how they did it. But the one thing with all the covers that I've at least I've heard is that it always sounds like Paranoid. Like, there's nothing you can't get away from that main riff because that's sort of what defines that song, you know. But yeah, there you go. But that this album alone, and I'm sure they'll come back and sort of react to some other songs as well. But there's a bunch of songs on there that everyone kind of knows. So this is why I think this album is a very defining sort of release by Black Sabbath. As much as the first album was a defining sort of moment for not only for Black Sabbath but for heavy music. I think Paranoid is the one that kind of sort of started to move things forward even more, you know. So it's a very interesting sort of period, you know, 1970 for Black Sabbath. It's amazing, like I said, you know, that they put out this album so soon after the first one, which is almost unheard of these days. Yeah, do let me know in the comments what you think of that, and should bands release more frequently, or do we just live in a completely different time period now where that's just not really a thing anymore? Because I guess nowadays it's a little bit more about singles, which interestingly enough, you know, back in the day, even pre-Black Sabbath, singles were the thing for a long time. Albums didn't sort of come into play until you know, a little bit later, as far as like the musical sort of history and stuff, you know. So I guess singles have sort of become a thing again, which is very interesting. There you go. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and please subscribe if you haven't. Thanks to those who have subscribed, and please check out our social media pages, and I'll see you in the next video.